This is Coder Radio, episode 11 for August 20th, 2012. Hi everyone, and welcome to Coder Radio, Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly talk show, taking a pragmatic look at the art and business of software development and related technologies. My name is Chris, and joining us every single week is our host, Michael Dominic. Hey there, Michael.
Guten Morgen, Chris.
Afternoon to you, sir. How are you doing?
I'm good.
All right, what are we talking about in this week's episode?
We are talking about outrageous fortune, which is a quote from Hamlet because I'm nerdy. But really what we're talking about is change. And how sometimes change is good and opens up opportunity. But sometimes it gives you a beating, kind of like Bane.
For those of you who are not watching live, the majority, we have been making fun, or not making fun, but doing impressions of Bane from the new Batman movie.
Yes,
yes. Change is hard. No, that's not very good, is it? Well, I know we've also gotten a ton of feedback from last week, so should we start with the emails?
All right, you have the one you're supposed to read, right?
I do. I have the screenshot, yes.
Excellent. So we'll start at the top.
Okay, all right.
All right, so Cole wrote in. He's doing some Django development. Another Python fan. So sad. But he's wondering if Ruby on Rails generates JavaScript and HTML to the point that he wouldn't have to fiddle with it at all.
Huh.
So this is really quick. No. You're going to have to play with it. You're going to have to do your UX. It does some, but I would not ship the generated code as production.
Oh, okay. Really?
So if you're good about Django, I would just keep going with Django and learn some jQuery or whatever front-end stuff you need. Because Rails is not going to solve that for you. So that was simple.
All right, yeah.
So Chris, apparently you wrote in this week.
I know. I like it. You mean there's other people in this world that have my first name? Because I don't remember writing this email.
Highly unlikely. Highly unlikely. So Chris writes in to share some Qt development wisdom. Yeah, that was actually very interesting.
Yeah.
So he has a Qt project running on multiple platforms, and he had some, let's say, issues getting it to run on Windows. Not terribly surprising.
Yeah.
He also wants to share his open source project, which is, Chris, actually something that might interest you, a personal audio server called StreamPublic.
Oh.
You can find the app running at streampublic.com. You can put it on your own box. Additionally, if you go to that website, somewhere on that site, there's a link to the GitHub repo of the source.
StreamPublic radio audio server. StreamPublic downloads for Linux, Windows, and Android client. Very cool. Looks great. I mean, the webpage.
Yeah, I haven't tried it because I don't have a use for that kind of thing, but I figured we'd share it, and he took the time to write in, and I'm sure that kind of thing is of interest to you.
Absolutely. I love that. I should look into it. I'll figure out what kind of stuff it uses on the back end. StreamPublic is a personal audio server that enables you to access your music from anywhere you have access to a web browser. This is very cool. StreamPublic audio server is a free download and currently available for Linux and Windows. I hope we'll be getting a Mac version as well soon. There's also an Android client. So I would take this, point it at my music library, and then I could stream it to my Android device on the go. From my Linux home file server. I like that. I like that a lot. Yeah.
Killing the Nexus Q. Oh. Never mind. Bad taste.
Too soon.
All right. Let's move right along because we have an epic wall of feedback.
Okay.
Let's just keep it live. All right. MacArthur writes in. First of all, he wrote me a letter in C++. Or C. I think it was actually C, but I forgot.
Right.
One thing he mentioned is he took extra care to make sure it would compile on a Mac using LLVM and GCC and whatever random compiler I might have, which was awesome.
Yeah.
In his letter, and me and him actually had a good correspondence going back and forth, he was discussing how, basically, there are points when object orientation is probably unnecessary, right? Where the procedural code might be more efficient, etc.
Okay.
It was a great discussion. Unfortunately, way too long to go into too much detail here. But just showing you, C's alive and well, guys.
Yeah.
C is not going anywhere.
And it's interesting too when you think you can kind of at least for me is I often neglect considering someone else's specific and very valid use case for something that I don't really use that often myself. And I'll say something like, for example, on TechSnap, and I'll often get an email back saying, my company does XYZ, so we still have to use X constantly, and we do it this way all the time. And I'm always like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. That makes sense.
Yeah, and really, for people who are new to development and all they know is object-oriented development, you should look at procedural development and functional, because that's kind of what me and him were discussing, and how sometimes OO is not the way to go.
Ah, interesting. All
right, so another MacArthur, or possibly the same guy, because I don't know, because it was the contact form, writes in to tell us that he has great success. Now, this is something I didn't even think of. So we talked about Clang with LLVM being better for debugging than GCC in a lot of cases.
Yeah, okay.
He uses that for debugging, but actually when he compiles for release, compiles with GCC. So I never even thought to do that.
Is this to sort of turn over a few unturned stones and find something surprising? I mean, why would you do that?
He's saying that Clang and LLVM find potential errors or throw better warnings than GCC by itself does.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, but he's still required to release with GCC. But that's actually a great idea. I honestly never thought of that. So anybody else who's required to use GCC for their work, but would like some of that better error checking and debugging, this is a great way to go. It's really not that hard to set up, right?
Yeah.
I mean, LLVM and Clang are in pretty much every repo.
Yeah.
They're built into Mac.
Yeah.
So easy peasy.
There you go. That's a great one.
It's a little hard on Windows now that I think about it, but. Actually, no. I think there's just an installer for LLVM.
Now, I see our next email is about the Pomodoro.
Yes, Il Pomodoro. We actually had a number of people in their emails write about Pomodoro.
Yeah.
Some people are having a hard time, but for Larry, I can't say your name. I'm totally sorry. For Lane.
I like for Larry.
This one's for Larry.
Hey, man, you're the one that has to read it, so you get to call it whatever. I say for Larry.
I say for Lane.
Okay.
Writes in to share his success with Pomodoro. Yeah, apparently it's really increased productivity and lowered his stress level.
Wow.
Which is exactly what we're going for here.
Yeah, definitely.
He also shares a GNOME extension.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
You actually had mentioned a Mac app, so this is sort of like an alternative for the guys on the GNOME 3 desktop. This looks great. It's a little, it goes right up into your little tray area, and it drops down, and you've got all kinds of options, including the duration slider. I like this UI, actually. A short break slider and a long break duration slider, as well as like an extra little mode options here. This is simple, but yet also exactly what you need. I like that.
Exactly. Yeah, it actually looks a lot like some of the Mac apps I've seen. It's interesting how much feedback we're getting on Pomodoro. Some people are having a hard time with it, but a lot of people seem to really be enjoying it.
Yeah, it's one of those things that was just kind of mentioned, and it's really taken hold, and it makes you realize that as somebody who hasn't yet done it yet, because it feels like it doesn't fit my workflow, but I keep flirting with the idea. It's like, okay, it's sort of like what finally pushed me to try Paleo. Is I just kept seeing success story after success story after success story.
What is Paleo?
Oh, we don't want to get into that. It's a food thing.
Oh, okay, never mind then.
Yeah, it's a way of eating. But
I hope it's through your mouth.
Well, it is. Yeah, it's a diet type. It's like a lifestyle of food eating. And we talked about it on the faux show actually. So
something I'd fail at. Okay.
Yeah, it's hard.
All right. So Daniel writes in asking about design patterns.
Okay.
So Daniel, pay attention to the book of the week this week. It was inspired by you. Secondly, we did go over this a little, I think, last episode or the one before.
Yeah.
But, he's getting some pressure about learning them, but he doesn't know, he feels that he needs to learn them, but doesn't understand when to use them or not. So, simple rule of thumb here. Use the design pattern if it fits the problem perfectly. I mean, I know that sounds crazy because there are cases where the design pattern will help other than that. But one of the worst things you can do is try and force a problem into a pattern.
Totally.
Because then you end up writing crap.
Yeah.
So, it's important not to be religious about it, but also you don't need to reinvent the wheel. And if you listen to last episode, I think we had a pretty lengthy discussion on that one. Yeah. So Nick writes in, he's using Qt. Well done.
Okay.
but he's using it with the D programming language rather than C++. He was having a hard time configuring Qtd, which is, I guess, the bridge that helps it work.
Interesting.
So, Nick, I know nothing about D, and I know nothing about using it with Qt.
Huh.
I'm just going to throw it out there for anybody in the community. If you know, send it to me, and I will send it to Nick.
Yeah.
Some kind of tutorial on configuring it.
Be the relay?
I'll relay it back to him because he's having a hell of a time.
Yeah, welcome to Qtd. It's a binding of the Qt application UI framework to the D programming language version 2. And this is really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I know I've heard of D, and I've heard some people really like it.
Yeah.
Also, it hasn't really, there's not that much D work being done compared to like C++,
well,
or even Objective-C.
Right, of course. But, I mean, there must be a reason, there must be like a task-specific reason why he wants to use it. Maybe he just likes it, I don't know.
He might just like it. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
it's. I'm not saying it's a bad language. I've never used it. So,
Right.
Unfortunately, Nick, I can't help you because I'm totally ignorant in terms of the D language. There was just one other point in your email, Nick. So you mentioned at the end that I hate C++ and Java. It's actually not the case. So I like C++ a lot, and I like Java for certain things. I like Java for, if I'm not, I've done web backends in Java, right?
Mm-hmm.
Java plays pretty good.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And actually, when I test a new IDE, I write a few Java classes to get a feel for the IDE.
Oh.
So Java's kind of a go-to. Instead of pseudocode, I tend to write in Java.
Right.
If I'm just bored.
Yeah, it's sort of like, I just want to try this out, prototype something. Java's a good way to go for you.
Also, Android, I write in Java, obviously.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. I guess I must have given that impression last episode.
Well, we kind of dogged a little bit on Java when we were kind of debating, we were kind of talking about the downsides of Java, and that would be the Java runtime environment dependency and things like that. But you actually, the chat room brought up Java is slow, and you actually came to Java's defense in last episode and said, if you do it right, it's actually not that slow anymore. So
well, and it depends on your compiler, and I mean, we don't need to get lost in the weeds because
I think that's exactly what happened last week. Because we went off in the weeds with Java, and I think we got somebody upset.
I mean, the problem with Java, talking about it like categorically like that, is that it really depends on like what kind of VM you're using, what platform you're on.
Yeah.
If you're a crappy developer, that's actually probably the biggest thing. Honestly, if you're if you assume the garbage collector is this magical being that's going to optimize your code for you, then you're wrong. And also, if you're saying Java's slow and using Ruby, you're kind of an idiot.
Man, just dogging on Ruby today.
Well, I like Ruby, but Ruby's great. Okay, so when you're starting, and let's just do this real quick, because the Ruby thing people keep emailing about. Ruby, if you're doing a project, you're either optimizing for performance or developer productivity, right? I would say Ruby and Rails are all the way on the developer productivity side. Basically, your performance is garbage.
Okay. I know some fast sites that run, well, they're probably generated. Never mind. I probably shouldn't say they. Yeah.
Ruby's backend, right?
Right.
So Ruby's great for getting something off the ground, but then it can become rough to optimize to scale. And I should say Rails, not Ruby in this case. That's a Rails problem.
Yep.
But the idea there is you're optimizing for developer performance, and if you're the project manager, for not paying the contractor for an extra 100 hours of work.
Right.
On the other end, you could write your server backend in C, which would be completely unusual, right? Somewhere in the middle is Java, and Java's actually got a big range because, there's I think it's called the hotspot VM from Oracle, there's the normal JVM, there's all kinds of different tooling behind Java.
Yeah, and the great thing about Java from a server perspective, from a server admin perspective, it's very, very portable. I can move it between servers. I can often move between, distributions or even operating systems. I mean, that's one thing I really love. Is a lot of times when the client tells me the backend's written in Java, I'm like, okay, easy enough.
And one thing is, if you like that Rails style of development, or even the Python style, there's JPython, there's JRuby, there's Rails. If you like MVC backend development and want to use pure Java, there is Play, like I mentioned before. So we should just be clear that the problem with Java is it's both a language and a platform. It's very big, and it's really, really hard to make, let's say, sweeping statements about its performance or utility and be correct.
Right.
Because you're absolutely right. People who say Java for desktop applications is comparatively slow to C++, if both have been optimized to hell, it's probably true. But those optimizations in C++ take a lot of time. So it's important, just you kind of sound like a fool. And this is, I guess, more for our student developers. Don't beat up on Java and then say Python's the be-all and end-all. Especially if you're blaming Java for performance, because Java is a lot faster than Python. So, and the same for Ruby and any of those scripting style languages. There we go.
All right, I like it. Now the official statements have been made on both Ruby and Java, but of course people can nitpick. coderradio@jupiterbroadcasting.com. And I want to say, what?
For this one, I'd like you to email Chris at Jupiter Broadcasting.
Well, I want to say, we make fun of like people complain over email, but I really love the fact that Coder Radio gets so much email because it's a great sign that the show is being well received. So I think it's great, and we get a lot of good content out of the email too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mean to be argumentative. My point is I don't want any, especially of our younger listeners, to sound foolish.
Right. Right. Oh yeah, Java, it's definitely something I hear often, and so I think it's worth putting out there. Yeah.
I mean, Java is very big still, and it's there are a lot of people who can optimize the crap out of it. So
yeah, just
don't count it out.
All right. Should we do the next email?
Yes, I think this is the one you get to read because I can't breathe anymore.
Now this is the screenshot, right? This is so cool. So why do we have a screenshot of this email?
Speaking of Java, so Jason wrote me an email with a Java file that actually required me to run an Ant build script.
This is
If you're a Java dev, you probably know what Ant is.
So he says, "Hi Dominic, I'm currently the sole developer on a high-profile project dealing with new technologies that old guard has no real knowledge of, at a large international IT consulting firm. While I enjoy the work and the responsibility, I cannot help but feel that I'm taken advantage of because I'm a quote-unquote junior developer. When the application goes to formal testing, another newly hired junior developer will be joining my team. But as I wrote 100% of the application, I will essentially have to get the new developer up to speed. How can I leverage the situation to my advantage? Is it fair to call myself the lead developer? Best, Jason." So he's got this new guy coming in. This new guy's going to come in and help him with the app, but he's already going to be 100% done with the app by the guy gets there. So it doesn't feel fair to be equals, I think is what he's saying.
Right. So it sounds like he's working for a larger company with a much more slower, awesome, a very slow, let's say, promotion cycle.
Yeah, okay.
A more traditional business promotion cycle.
Right.
So what you can do, don't start calling yourself the lead developer because you'll just annoy your boss. Redo your resume and emphasize that you led the project and you did it yourself.
Yeah.
Then go get a job at a startup. Because what you did, you'll probably be able to jump from junior to lead and skip the whole developer part.
That's a great... Now, that sounds like that's a crazy... The best way to get a promotion is to jump ship, but you're right, because they will look at that experience as extremely valuable. That will make you a valuable hire to them.
Right. And what will happen is even though your lead developer title will come to a startup, if it fails and you need to go back to another company, no one's going to try and offer you a lower position.
You've got lead developer now on your resume.
Yeah. And the other thing is lead developer sometimes means different things. I mean, in some companies, it means PM, who does some coding. In some companies, it's, actually one of my clients, lead developers below senior, and the other client, lead developers above senior.
I hate this whole ranking system. It sounds so corporate, but I guess it's
fake. I mean, actually, up until last week on my LinkedIn, I just called myself software engineer Fingertip Tech Inc. or software developer Fingertip Tech Inc. Problem was I kept getting emails from recruiters telling me, "Oh, we can get you up to senior or lead." So I had to change the title just to stem the emails.
Interesting. Yeah, it's one of those things where like you and I aren't huge fans of it, but it's like what the industry uses to differentiate skill sets and whatnot.
Right, and it's a little strange because development doesn't always use years of experience for promotions. In fact, it's sad to say, but there is something of a bias against older guys. A lot of companies.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I was very young when I got the lead title.
I think you and I could have a whole episode on age bias because I was very young when I got into the industry, and now I'm not the youngest guy in the room anymore, and definitely changes things.
But what's interesting is, larger companies have the opposite bias, I would say.
There's a sweet spot. There's a sweet spot for age, and if you get too old, people think that you're out of touch and you're too slow and you can't handle the stress. And if you're too young, people don't think you have enough experience and haven't done it for long enough to really know how to do it right.
Yeah, but I mean, Jason, if you're obviously young, I would say go work at a startup. You'll get a big promotion, so to speak. Hopefully, it doesn't crash in a few months. You work there for a year.
If he is young, now would be the time to do something like this, because there is some risk associated with it. But the reality is you go work at a startup. If they crash, you'll probably get laid off, and then you'll have something on your resume that could be very attractive. And be mindful of the job market in your area and what the success rate of your peers around you trying to get jobs is, of course. But you could always, if you're dead set on staying at your current position, you can sit down and talk to your manager about it and kind of outline, I really feel like I'm going to be playing a much more of an advisory and support role with this new hire. Can we recognize that at some level? But
see, that's tough though, because it sounds like from his email that they're a traditional company. You're promoted based on yours.
Yeah, and it depends on the manager, right? Because the manager might look at you and go, really? Why don't you just go back to your seat and do your job like I tell you to do? It just depends on how the manager is receptive to that kind of stuff too. So
what I would say is, and then I was in this position once. If you're already doing the job, but not getting the title because you're young or whatever the issue is, screw them. Like, honestly, leave.
Yeah.
I get the title. Or in my case, give yourself the title.
If the job's one of those jobs where they keep giving you more and more responsibilities and they never recognize it in either title or pay, that not only is that disrespectful, but it's going to burn you out because it's going to rub you the wrong way time after time, and eventually you're going to get jaded and you're not going to be happy there. So you might as well go find work somewhere else. That way you keep your energy level up. Don't ruin this for yourself. Don't let it ruin this.
Don't let them burn you out. And honestly, one of the reasons you probably might have a harder time getting promoted is because there's a mandatory pay raise at most companies.
When I was younger too, I let them tell me that I had a long-term job and that it was the most stable in the industry, and that they've never laid. And the line was that we've never laid a single person off in 25 years, and all of this stuff. I just sat there and listened, and so I just took on more and more things. I didn't get the appropriate pay raises or the official title changes, and after 6 years, I got laid off when they outsourced.
Yeah, and it's really sad. I have some companies that are very .NET focused, and this seems to happen there too, where there's guys who've been doing it for 10 years that are somehow still like generic developer, and they don't even, some of them complain the company doesn't reflect it in pay raises. Because it's one of those things where, they have the whole architect promotion flow, and you can't get a raise or promotion until someone leaves, other than the normal cost of living raise.
Right. So
I would say that, this is the type of thing that only changes because people force them to change.
And it's to me at least, it seemed like a very scary idea. Like it was just not worth it. The risk, a lot of the devil is better than the devil you don't, or whatever that saying is. And if they hadn't laid me off, I would have never made the change, and it became like the most positive change I could have ever made.
Yeah, and I know it's tough. And one thing is, I can tell you in startups, they do go out of business. Well, it happens, and you could get laid off.
That's not the end of the world, though.
It's not. But go for it. Take a shot. Worst thing that happens, you don't find another job and you continue working where you are.
Right. That's true, right? You don't have to quit until you find the job. So he's in a really good position. Good position.
Also, what might happen if I was your manager and I wasn't being a tool for budgetary reasons, I'd probably not give you the lead promotion, but drop the junior. Because you have to understand, there's probably political issues with doing a two-step promotion internally.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, because then if you got a 2-grade promotion,
that would technically put you in the next pay grade, and nobody else in these positions is in this pay grade.
Jason gets it, but what about John, who's not a junior developer but would like to be an architect instead of a lead?
Mm-hmm.
So you're probably not going to get lead now that I think about it. You may get regular, or I guess regular developer. It's like vanilla ice cream. Right now, he's like the fat-free skim version.
Right.
It also depends on what kind of work you do. So generally, enterprise Java and .NET are going to be slower and more traditional. So that's something to watch out for. If you're a Java dev, you may want to be a little more conservative. Because there's someone who will take your job straight out of college.
I gotcha.
Yeah. So best of luck.
All right. Now, should we take a quick pause here and remind folks about supporting these fine shows, these fine programs?
Yes,
Yes,
Goose.
yes, yes. All right, folks. Well, this week, of course, we have the Code School affiliate, which is learning by example online, and we have a link to that at the bottom of Jupiter Broadcasting for Code School, which is a perfect affiliate tie-in for this here show. We also have links down there that you can click on before you shop at Amazon US, UK, DE, Netflix US, Newegg, ThinkGeek, Best Buy, Mint.com, which is free, Audible.com, which, oh my gosh, I'm reading an incredible book I'll probably be talking about at some point right now, Code School Gamefly, and then at the end of those links, we have our Chrome extension and a link to our Firefox extension. And if you load one of those extensions in your web browser, you just say add to Chrome or, add to Firefox, it will automatically tag your shopping session when you're at one of our participating affiliates. You don't even have to think about it and worry about it. You just go there, it'll automatically tag it and take care of business for you, and a portion of your shopping session is contributed anonymously to Jupiter Broadcasting. Now, the great thing is, now that we have these in the official web stores, you might have our old unofficial extensions that were just linked directly from our website. Now that they're in these stores, we can push out updates. We're doing things like we're adding new affiliates, we're adding optimization tricks as we learn them, and all those kinds of things. And the best way to keep getting the most latest, current, bestest, freshest extension is to install them through the web store. I guess Firefox doesn't really call it a web store so much. They call it the add-ons gallery or something. I'm not sure what they call it. But Chrome just straight up calls it a web store. And you can find links to those at the bottom of jupiterbroadcasting.com, as well as direct links to any of our affiliate participating websites. In fact, truth be told, we actually have more in the extensions than are listed on the website, because otherwise it'd just be a long, nasty list down there. So thanks to everyone who does that, sort of locks it in and keeps these shows on the air and keeps paying the bills so we can keep doing them for you. For freezies! All right, so there we go. So that's the plug I wanted to get out of the way for this episode. Now, I absolutely love this next subject title. Chris was right about Code Journal.
You missed the last feedback, though.
Oh, I did? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, well, why don't we get that real quick then?
Because this guy is probably the coolest feedback.
All right, let's do it.
So Ewood, again, I'm totally sorry for murdering your name, writes in to remind us there's a lot of embedded developers out there that listen to this show. Actually, that's true. I keep getting like 2 or 3 emails a week from them.
It's because there's a lot of embedded development jobs and devices out there.
So he has 2 points. One is, remember Bill from last week who was concerned about getting work as a low-level Linux developer?
Yeah.
Bill confirms my suspicion that he will A, get a job easily, and B, make a boatload of money.
Oh, really? See, this. What I get into this podcasting racket for?
You're doing it wrong.
Exactly. I totally could have been a kernel developer.
Oh my god.
Okay,
I blame you for Pulse Audio, by the way. So also, and more importantly, the man's worked in robotics. So when the robots take over, and they're firing from their ships, because I imagine they have airships, probably steampunk style.
They are robots.
We're going to blame this guy.
Yeah, okay.
And then we're going to blame Chris for saying bad things about Android in the Nexus Q.
Oh, no.
Because he will be the one who will have offended them.
I angered them. You're right.
Yes.
And of course the robots listen to Coder Radio because they're smart.
Yes, and we have all those scripts running that fake. I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, we have all the embedded command and control codes in the actual show.
Exactly.
So we have subtle audio cues that no regular human would ever pick up on.
Computer, what happened?
See? Would you ever pick up on that? I wouldn't pick up on that.
But right now, there's a few drones flying over my house, scanning for Apple products and bricking them as we speak.
You better duck because I think I hear one coming right. Oh, watch out, Michael! Here it goes.
Probably the least subtle drone ever.
Yeah.
But okay.
Yeah.
All right, Chris. You know you like this next heading.
I do. Chris was right about Code Journal.
Yeah. So the App Store is a lot better than direct sales.
Okay, so how long have you been in the App Store now, at this point?
In like 5 days.
Okay, 5 days. And have sales been, I guess, better?
A lot better. More than triple.
Okay. All right, how are the reviews going and all that kind of stuff?
All the reviews I have are 5-star reviews.
Oh, wow, look at you go. Have
Yes.
Have you gotten any kind of sense of, feedback in terms of have users been able to contact you outside the store, or have these all essentially become nameless?
So no one has. So it's interesting. As soon as it was on the App Store, direct sales basically died.
And it's all just nameless clicks now.
Mostly it's nameless App Store. There's still like 1 or 2 direct sales, but mostly it's all App Store. And there's a large German contingent buying the app. To which I say, Guten Morgen.
Guten Morgen.
Das Jahr. That might be Russian crap.
Yeah. You got some good ratings here. That's for sure. Yeah.
One from Chris Fisher.
Yeah, I like that guy.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
So I guess you're keeping it here now then.
Yeah, I'm going to keep it in both places.
So, all right, well, there you go. So it's interesting enough. The App Store, while you resisted, does seem like it might have been a good way to go. And
as the Borg would say, resistance was futile.
Wow. I don't know. I guess I feel kind of sad, but at the same time, I'm glad it's making more sales for you.
Yeah.
And I guess it means... So at this point, let me ask you this. I take this as you would probably never release another app again without just going to the App Store first now. Right? You're done with direct sales for at least Mac apps?
I'm probably done with direct sales altogether, actually. Because PayPal's a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
And their percentages are a little god-awful.
So you're going to target what then?
I'm probably going to just distribute first-party apps through relative app stores. The one exception may be a Linux port of CodeJournal.
But you could even then still have that in the Ubuntu Software Center.
Yeah, but I want it to be on more than one distro.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing is, I like Gumroad, the current processor.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody else seems to.
Your customers don't want to use it.
They don't trust it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's what it's really coming down to. And PayPal, that's a whole nother project setting it up, and I don't want to do it. Like when I say setting up, I mean a proper PayPal implementation where it checks receipts and validates everything.
Right.
So there's also the issue of PayPal's unique percentages and how they do their fees is less favorable.
And there's also just the ambiguity of how PayPal works and how, we know people who've just had their accounts frozen for short periods of time or permanently, and you're sort of defenseless in that scenario, and they don't have to follow the same rules that regular banks have to follow. So
yeah, so I'm kind of the good thing is any Linux version would take some time, and I'm doing it, but it's going to take time. It's not a decision that has to be made tomorrow. But I don't think direct sales are going to be significant enough for most platforms. The only platform that maybe Windows, if there was one.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, so are you basically saying, without saying it, that you're going to make a modern UI Metro version of CodeJournal? Because that's the only way you're going to distribute through the Windows 8 App Store. For now, at least.
So that may happen. I'm currently researching the Windows 8 stuff. There's a lot of change, let's say, in the Windows ecosystem.
Yeah, I just call it my little term for it is train wreckish.
I wouldn't say that. I mean, if you want to look at it, they're modernizing ancient APIs, which they need to do, and the problem is they're forcing people to come along with them, and people are upset. But Mac does that all the time. Hey, we're deprecating this, and if you use it in 6 months, we're gonna reject your app, or it's gonna crash. I mean,
it's good they're doing an improvement in that regard. I mean, I think that is good. I think though, and I'm surprised it doesn't bother you, to be honest, because it's sort of forcing you into a corner on the functionality. Like for example, you have issue with the way sandboxing limits future functionality of CodeJournal. Well, being a Metro-based app is got to be significantly limiting on the features. Am I misunderstanding? It seems like that is the ultimate reduction in capabilities.
In what I mean, it has the same sandboxing rules, but actually they're not as bad.
Well,
let's just take a few steps back. Any theoretical Metro app would have to have basically the same functionality as the Mac app, right? But I mean, let's be real here. It's nice to say I'm going to build the best app with the most powerful features, and if no one buys it and you can't afford to continue developing it, you've wasted your time,
right?
And whatever resources you put into it.
Yeah.
So if there are compromises to be made that will make the product sustainable, that's the pragmatic way to do it, and that's the way I would go. I mean, remember, this is not an open source project. This is proprietary.
Right.
The goal is to make money, right?
Right.
I mean, the more lofty goal is a tool to help developers keep in touch with their colleagues, but ultimately,
your goal is to make money.
It's an app.
And so what you're saying is, if you can make money as a Metro app, it doesn't matter if it can't do everything you want because you're making money.
Well, no, if there were to be a Windows version, the decision is not can I make money as a Metro app, is can I make money as a classic or Windows 7 app? And I would say the
Ah,
answer is probably no. Just like I couldn't make a significant amount of money on the direct sales for Mac anymore.
interesting. You flip it around, you look at it from that angle, I can see your point. Yeah.
Yeah, so what I always do, and this is actually probably good to mention, I take the ideal thing I would like to do
Mm-hmm.
and see if it has a feasible win scenario. And if it doesn't, just like with Code Journal's direct sales, or if it doesn't play out that way, you have to quickly be able to pivot back.
It really, and I won't make us go down this path. But when the Steam software store ships, we've got to talk about that because that could change a lot of things for you.
I don't think it will, but we can talk about that later.
Yeah. All right. So, well, I'm glad you're making some sales now on the Mac App Store.
Yeah, you were. I mean, you were very correct.
Kind of don't like when you say that because
yeah,
I'm kind of sad that you had to go in there.
Huh?
I'm kind of sad that you had to go in there to make the money. But you know, it turns out to be. It turns out it's got to be utility apps like yours, especially, are kind of doomed in that sense because it makes deployment easy. It's just easier for centralized purchasing. I do trust Apple more than I trust a regular website, just like I would trust the Microsoft store, and I trust the Canonical store more than I trust some independent developer. Now, I am savvy enough to recognize a back-end payment technology that I've heard of and be like, oh, okay, well, I don't have a problem with this.
Yeah, but the average Joe user is not,
Right.
and you know, there's also a lot of convenience to using app stores, and
we forget there was a period of time where like I had family who would never buy anything online. Like, oh, you bought that online? That's weird, you know. And there's still a little mild bit of that, a little bit, and people get a little weird about credit card info and getting stolen and ID theft and all those kinds of things.
yeah, I mean, I actually had a client complain that she paid me via Square and her credit card got stolen.
Mm.
And I said, well, I doubt Square because she wasn't familiar with it. I said, but you know, they're now Starbucks payment processor for a lot of things, so I really doubt it's them.
It's just okay. It's like, but you have to give her that. You have to give her that reassurance. Well, no, a real name brand uses this. It's okay.
Yeah. So this is not a new issue, and I don't want to be Don Quixote here, tilting at windmills, trying to change the tide. I mean, users like app stores. Remember, and I'm probably more pragmatic than probably you or most of the audience. So to me, the point was an experiment. The data readout, so to speak, showed one way, and that's it. That's right. I mean, I got what was definitely actionable data.
Well, there you go.
And I took the appropriate action.
And lesson learned. And it makes it, to me, it does make sense because it's funneling users in one spot.
Well, even Brian Lunduke had to do it. I mean, this is not, I'm not blazing a trail here.
Right.
I mean, he did the same thing, and the difference was his stuff was more expensive for a while. But, I'm not the first one to run this test.
Yeah, he would actually charge more in the App Store than he would on his website and still sell more App Store versions.
I thought about doing that, but it was just kind of toolish, so I didn't do it. I said I would, but then I was like, eh.
Would you put it at $4.99?
Yeah, it's the same price everywhere now. Because the sale ended. I tweeted about it on the last few days.
That's a great price for a desktop app, but let's be honest.
Well, my main competitor is like $80. So, and he's kicking my ass, but he's been around for 4 years or something.
Yeah.
And it's a different kind of tool, but his functionality contains my functionality. We'll put it that way.
All right. Well, we're 40 minutes in. Should we get on to Castles on Sand?
No, let's talk more about the app. No, I'm kidding. So, Castles on Sand. I thought this was a clever title.
Yeah.
Remember, the topic is supposed to be change, not Chris gloating about being correct.
Right.
So, I think as my Windows buddies are finding out, and as Apple developers find out once every 3 months, whether we need it or not, the platforms change, right?
Yeah.
APIs stop working, APIs get deprecated. And, a great example.
It's a great example is Windows 8. I mean, look what they're doing. They're introducing a whole bunch of new APIs, right?
Right. And anybody who owns an Xbox and is somewhat into indie games will know, hopefully, what XNA is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If they don't know what the platform is, they'll know probably either some popular games called Fez, possibly Spelunky,
Now, just so I have it, just so I know I have it
Sure.
right, XNA is it's sort of a way for developers to create a game or something that is very DirectX heavy, but runs on the desktop Windows platform and on the Xbox 360, and even potentially Windows Phone devices, right?
So not potentially, it does run on Windows Phone. Yeah. So the poor man's simple definition of XNA is a game framework.
Yeah. Okay.
That abstracts away DirectX.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's a high-level C# framework.
So it's something, and DirectX itself is a layer of abstraction.
Yeah, but I mean, DirectX is high-level, kind of like C++ is.
Gotcha. Okay.
I mean, and DirectX gives you a lot more power. But so one of the things is XNA was partially created because Microsoft wanted indie games on the Xbox, but didn't want to give people native code for security reasons.
Oh, okay. Well, and it also seems like a great tool to, for developers to write their in my example game, right, and then just put it on all kinds of Microsoft platforms, which makes it really nice. I mean, that's a really nice advantage of that.
Right, and it's also it's easier and faster in most cases to write an XNA game than a DirectX game.
Mm.
So that's a big thing, especially for a small team.
Oh, cute. XNA stands for XNA is not an acronym.
Yes, they think they're very clever.
Yes.
Just like GNU is not Linux.
Yeah, GNU is,
not Unix, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of popular games. I mentioned Fedge, I mentioned Spelunky. There's a number of others, Castle Crashers. We don't need to go down the litany of them.
Yeah.
Issue is that if you look at all the Windows 8 docs, XNA is nowhere to be found. Why? Because XNA doesn't tie into Metro, which means XNA games will very likely not be on the App Store. Now, to be totally fair, there's no announcement about this. But
that's how they've done it. That's how they've done all of the stuff that they phased out.
And if you look at their indie game forums, the moderators are, the people are upset, and they're saying, but we've made Direct 2D so much more accessible. Oh, it's in C++. So how are you going to port your game?
This is really interesting. They've built up this framework, and it really has been pitched to them as the Microsoft platform solution. And I realize they're not the same thing at all, but as was Silverlight, and Silverlight's also being dropped in Metro. A couple of fundamental technologies that Microsoft sort of told developers they could bet on that they're just sort of walking away from.
So what's interesting is that
in some regards,
XNA had a very big consumer-facing developer, I guess you could say, developer base. Silverlight was more used internally by C# developers or .NET developers working for like HR departments.
Or it had some Windows Phone apps that people were thinking they could move over.
But they can move over. So those Windows Phone apps can move to Windows. Okay. Yeah, they're backwards compatible.
Okay.
But XNA is not currently. It's deprecated, or it's one of those things where it's silently deprecated.
Right.
So here's the next question that comes from this. A, what happens with the next Xbox and all these people who have their business based on XNA?
You think the next Xbox won't support it either, huh?
I'm wondering if they're going to support indie games at all.
Oh, of course. They want to make this. They want to get a cut of the revenue sales.
I'm not afraid of C++, but Direct 2D is a much bigger endeavor. Writing a DirectX 2D game, that's basically writing an OpenGL game. It's the same amount of effort.
I guess I could see if Microsoft has the next Xbox under development right now, which I'm sure they do, and they're rolling out Windows 8 right now, and they're looking at this going, the next Xbox we got to phase out XNA. We might as well start ripping that Band-Aid off now with Windows 8.
Yeah.
And, oh man, I don't know. That would really, really send some shockwaves through the Xbox 360 development community.
Yeah, it's going to change a lot of their toolkit. The open source community has actually jumped in to help. There's a tool called SharpDX that is a C# layer 2 DirectX. There's also MonoGame that is trying to be a clone of XNA.
Okay.
That will run on multiple platforms, including iOS, Windows, and hopefully be available in the Windows Store and the Apple App Store. The problem here...
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. We have examples of other big profile big profile platform changes and framework changes, but I guess I'm doing Googling right now to see if there's been any comment from Microsoft, because as a developer with my business based around this, I'd really want an answer to this.
Well, that's the thing. And if you read the forums, if the answer were no, XNA is going to die, we're not giving you any migration tools, you're going to have to port to DirectX 2D.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not nice, but, developers would know what to do. Right now, there's no word. It's silence on all fronts, and all there is speculation. And we've gone pretty far into the specific case here.
Okay.
But let's just look at one app. Let's look at Fez by Phil Fish. Wildly successful game on Xbox, right? If you're him, you're probably having a little bit of a panic attack. If you saw it.
When you're talking about they're dropping it from Windows Phone 8, or are you talking about it from Windows 8? They're dropping XNA support.
Okay, so it will work just like any legacy platform would work. It will not be eligible for the App Store.
Okay. And I'm also reading an article here from Mary Jo Foley talking about Windows Phone 8 looks like it's dropping. So Metro in Windows 8 and Windows Phone 8, the OS, are both dropping support. But if you drop down to the classic Windows 8 desktop, then you're not beholden to the restrictions of the App Store at all, and you can just load anything you want on your system on the Windows 8 desktop.
Right, but so if they're dropping support and they're not going to support the platform anyway, that's
developers are going to bail.
I mean, the smart thing to do is support mono game, and I've been burned by mono. But if you have a full-scale game in XNA, it's the only choice.
Yeah.
I mean, one hope Victor B is correct. They did some weird stuff with Visual Studio Express, then backed out. I hope to be wrong. I hope that they're just waiting to announce the Xbox 720 or whatever the hell they're going to call it. And that's why there's no XNA 5.
Oh, yeah, maybe they'll introduce something new at that point.
But it seems like a bad play, because wouldn't you want people to be able to port their Xbox games to these, the Windows tablets and the Windows RT devices?
You would think so. And I've always been surprised at how badly at times Microsoft is at integrating all of their different services throughout their different devices. Like, they had Zune and Xbox and the Windows Media Store, and none of them were really related, and you couldn't buy one from one and really watch it on the other for the longest time. And now they're kind of doing that again in some regards, but every now and then they kind of build to a point and it all kind of comes together.
And one of the other issues is, so I'm looking at the DirectX 2D documentation. I'm like, gee, I could just do this in OpenGL or, Unity.
Yeah.
And put it on iOS, Mac, and Android.
Right.
And classic Windows.
That is their real challenge. That is their biggest issue they should be worried about, because if they make this too bumpy, people will just use that as opportunity, just like you pointed out. Why not go to something then that targets all of the platforms I want? And now you've got Unity. We're not talking Unity the desktop. We're talking Unity
the game
engine. And now thanks to Kickstarter projects, Unity is coming to Linux too. So you could write for Windows desktops, Mac desktops, Linux desktops, and even portable devices using that.
Yeah, and that's gonna hurt. And I think we're getting away from the developer story here. But the high-level developer story is, you relied on a framework and now it's gone, or it's dying. So what do you do?
What do you do?
Honestly, I don't know. I mean, the odds are you adapt and survive, right? You can either adopt something open source like Mono Game, but it's going to be a little bumpy because it's not that mature. And I was actually playing with Mono Game this weekend. I get the feeling that there's a lot of Linux support and very little Mac support. Getting it set up on a Mac was pretty much a nightmare.
No good.
Because the sample project you download can't compile. It's missing files. It's not configured correctly. So you can tell, and I'm told this is totally anecdotal, and if any monogame developers are in the chat and want to email me to dispute this, but it seems like they're only playing lip service to cross-platform, and they really mean Linux and Windows, which is fine. But that kind of sloppiness, having your example not be able to just hit Command B compile, is not a framework I would want to bet a product on.
And wouldn't they be suffering from playing the catch-up game? And then if the product that they're essentially copying after were to end, where do they go after that? It seems like they don't have a long future trajectory. To me, it seems like your best option when you come to this point in the fork in the road, essentially, when they're dropping support for the framework you use, you gotta survey the market at that point in time, say, what is my best, exit strategy? And it's going to be dependent every time this comes up. Like 5 years down the road, it's going to be a completely another set of options when the next set of frameworks or whatever it is gets sunsetted. It's going to be a totally different thing.
What's really awkward in this case is that the two options that Microsoft is pushing are JavaScript and C++ with DirectX. Now, JavaScript, there is a large subset of games.
I would say it's more like they're pushing JavaScript, and if you really have to, if that's not going to get the job done, then you can use C++. The impression I've got is they're not pushing them as one and the same. They're kind of.
Well, no, if you read their docs, though, they admit right out that JavaScript is good for simple games that don't require complex animation.
Because that's the reality.
Your definition of simple and my definition of simple might be a little different.
Okay.
Also, let's say you do your 2D platformer in JavaScript. Are you not going to be able to do proper particle effects? Are you going to need to spend tons of time optimizing your code just because you had to write it in something slow? On the converse, if you write in C++, you're down in the weeds. Like you're writing to Direct2D to do a simple platformer. A little bit of abstraction would be great for efficiency. So I really think XNA had a good place in the market. I'm hoping Monogame does well. Actually, Chris, I think you changed my mind, though.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I was going to say Monogame was the good. I think the way to go is Direct2D.
Well, I wonder, do you think, Michael, just to kind of develop from a developer perspective, do you think that maybe as a developer you get burned one too many times and you jump over to an open source project, and that's why so many open source projects start at the infrastructure level and then never go beyond that? Because developers get so exhausted of this constant abandonment from commercial companies. They're like, oh, that's it. I'm going to go write this whole platform. I'm going to do all this stuff, and then I'm going to build the most amazing thing on top of that. Yeah,
but you know what happens? And I hate to say it, but a lot of those open source projects that don't have some kind of backing tend to get abandoned too. Then eventually show their age, and you'll be making the same decision in a year.
And as a platform owner, at certain points, you got to make tough calls to move that platform forward so that way it stays competitive.
Yeah, I think in general, the changes to the Windows API and deprecating and actually removing a lot of crap was the right thing to do. I think the XNA situation is odd. Even if they have something coming down the pike, they could quell a lot of anger on their developer forums by simply saying, talk to me in 3 months.
That's what's so weird about this whole thing is they're not just, and there's been other things like this, like the deprecation of Silverlight and other things that have come up during this development cycle that Microsoft has been unusually characteristically quiet. Like they're trying to pull off like an Apple mystique kind of thing.
Yeah. And the problem is, Apple's not quiet with their developers, but they will sue the crap out of you if you talk.
They NDA all up in this. And they just say, all right, here, you get to know, but if you tell anybody, we'll fire lasers at you.
So, 6 months in advance if Apple's going to swing the ban hammer on something.
Well, and you look at all of the recent product announcements Apple has done that have involved adopting some sort of new technology. They generally put them in the hands of developers earlier. Now, we're not seeing that with the new iPhone, which is going to have a new resolution and aspect ratio that developers will need to accommodate.
Is that true?
But well, you tell me.
See, that they won't tell us.
Right.
So here's the trick with Apple. If they can change your app for you, they will.
Right.
Or Microsoft will say, no, you got to rewrite it, man. Sorry.
Right. Apple,
that's the difference.
Yeah. If they can keep it a secret, they will. But they will also, in certain instances, like iOS 6, right? It's not out yet, and people have got their hands all over it. They're working on it right now.
But also, you kind of have to understand that it's not fair to compare them right now because Apple's, by all accounts, winning. In almost every market they compete in.
Yeah, that's and
Microsoft is getting their ass handed to them. So what's
Microsoft
happening?
Has to move a little quicker. You think
they have to move fast? They have to be. Remember all those Apple commercials where they were the rebels? They were the resistance. Remember the one where they dressed up as resistance fighters and they were like fighting Nazis or something? Yeah, you can YouTube it. It's like an old black and white commercial. Now they're the top dog.
So this is a headline that came out while our show is being recorded. Apple has become the most valuable traded stock ever. Yeah. So that came out, and then what came out on Friday is something that didn't even exist 5 years ago, has higher sales than everything Microsoft has to offer, more than Windows, Office, Xbox, Bing, Windows Phone, and every other product Microsoft has created since 1975. In the quarter ending March 31st, 2012, the iPhone had sales of $22.7 billion. just the iPhone. And Microsoft, as an overall entire corporation, had sales of $17.4 billion. So just the iPhone division of Apple makes more money than all of Microsoft put together in a single quarter.
So, and that has a direct effect on the developer story. When you're successful as a platform, you don't change things. You're very conservative. You slow down. So we're going to see less sweeping changes on the Apple side, I would guess. I'm basing that on nothing.
But it's logical. Usually they do. They slow down so that way.
Right.
Yeah.
But for Microsoft developers, when you're losing, and it's important to say that losing, they're still making a lot of money. Like,
oh yeah, $17.4 billion in a single quarter.
I would love to lose like Microsoft loses.
Yeah.
I mean, I would take that defeat with a smile.
As of right now, though, Apple stock is just absolutely insane. $660.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, I think that's a little in the weeds too. But
yeah,
I mean, the point is, from a developer perspective, these things are going to now happen on Microsoft platforms. So if you're working on their platforms, you're going to see rapid changes, and that's what Windows 8 is, and that's what they need. Now, whether you like Metro or you don't, it's not the point. You have to. I'm sorry, I can't call it Metro. That's right. You have to adapt and survive
to the Windows 8 UI.
The issue is, well, just to the new API.
Yeah.
The issue is that if you're, you know, people get hurt in these kind of transitions, and it looks like XNA developers are taking the brunt, right? And this happens on every side. You know, Google has hurt developers in a lot of meaningful ways. I mean, we could get in the weeds here too, but the fact that everything's free, or things are more likely to be free on Android, is not a coincidence.
Oh, well, and you know, you talk about platform changes. There have been some major iterations to Android that sort of pulled the rug out. I mean, look at, you know, look at the Froyo devices out there right now, right? And
well, let's just take 2.0 and Jelly Bean and compare them. And let's compare the API.
And the thing that's hard for developers is the deployment is so heavy on the older devices right now.
Exactly.
That'll catch up, but you know, it's this sort of like lag time that developers have to accommodate for.
Yeah, I mean, you know, this is not a Microsoft, Apple, Google specific issue. This happens everywhere, right? Platforms have to change. You have to adapt. How do you adapt? One solution is adopt an open source project as a stopgap for a while.
Yeah. So Rikai in the chat room's pointing out an interesting quote from Windows Developer Preview. That says that XNA isn't needed anymore, is the actual quote.
Yeah, so they've imported some of the XNA functionality. But you're still going to have to reproduce a lot of it yourself. And my dog just came to say hi.
Yeah, hi, doggy.
He is actually a very top XNA developer. He's been shaking in the corner this whole time.
Well,
I mean, bottom line, they've imported some of the functionality. It's not all there. You know, what could happen is somebody's generous enough to make an open source library that has the rest of the functionality, and this goes away.
My prediction is that in a year's time from now, this time next year, we'll be talking about Windows 8.5, and it'll bring in a bunch of these fixes. It'll bring a start menu back, and it's going to bring a lot of little things that there's going to be a lot of things people will get over, and it's not going to be a big deal. And there's still remaining issues. Microsoft will release a point update to fix it. And I'm not just making that up. I've heard rumors that they're actually already working on that because that'll be the release they also target to business.
From your lips to God's ears.
Speaking of God's ears, should we go over to the orders from on high section of today's show?
Yes. When that celestial being known as the project manager rains down his wisdom upon the
PMO
peons.
in the sky.
Yes. The light warms your face and he tells you, you know that Java implementation you've been working on for 6 months? We're switching to Ruby, baby. Oh. So why don't you RM tac R the entire directory?
We're going to need you to start working the weekends.
Yeah. So we've been talking about adapting to change because the platform vendor decided to, you know, curb stomp you. What about the PM? Because he is really good at change. In fact, you know what? The PM says, yes, we can. Right to sign for change and protest right outside your desk. All the time. Walks in. I see that line you wrote. Delete it. Rewrite it. That's how they roll. And I know that's an incredible exaggeration.
And they also have goatees. And,
they have goatees.
Yeah.
And, you know, sometimes they whip out a drum circle.
And it's all because of transporter accident. No, this is an interesting problem because it's like, okay, well, I'm not a Ruby expert. I'm a Java expert. How do you expect me to just reinvent it like that? I mean, that would be my first reaction.
So I've actually had this happen. My first reaction is, what? Are you kidding? The answer is always no.
Of course.
So here's the problem, and here's how this usually happens. They hire a new CTO.
Yes.
Who has some very opinionated views on software and feels that every problem in your implementation can be changed by just switching the stack.
Oh my God, I have so been through this.
Rather than fixing the so let's say there's a performance bug on a certain operation to the database. Solution, get rid of MySQL, go to MongoDB. Yeah, it's going to take 2 months.
Oh my gosh, Michael, you have no idea how much I've been through this and how awful it is.
They love to tout words like web scale, web scale, web scale. This is like the most painful thing because you can't tell, of what's effectively your boss's boss, that he's a moron.
Right.
And as a contractor, this usually also coincides with the termination of your contract.
This was the last time I had this happen to me was the last 9-to-5 job I ever held. After that point, I said, I will never do IT again. This is awful. And I went to contract work, which was just more IT work, but it was contract work. And then, seeing as a contractor, I just make money off the situation. But as an employee sitting there at my desk, to have a new CTO, he came in, he got hired, he bumped the old person out, sat down, reviewed the infrastructure, and said, we're changing all of this.
The best is when they change platforms completely.
Yeah.
So let's say you've got your, even if you have okay, I know this is the wrong audience, but if you have a functioning ASP.NET app, and it doesn't have problems, don't rewrite it in like Ruby or something.
Or in my scenario, we had a fully functional PHP app. Yeah. That they wanted to rewrite in ASP.NET.
Oh, because PHP is from the 80s, bro. It's not even true.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, this happens a lot, and if you haven't had it happen, you're either very lucky, go buy a lottery ticket, or you haven't been around too long. Because I've seen this happen. By the way, games companies, this happens all the time.
Well, the problem is I was a Linux admin, and that's what I did. And the system was actually running really great. It's one of these systems, the worst part was I was very proud of the accomplishment because it was a very well done system. And when they switched it all out, I then became a Windows admin. And I could perfectly do Windows systems. I admin hundreds of Windows servers, but I didn't want to do that. And I was stuck at a job now doing something that wasn't what I signed up for.
I've actually had to leave contracts or not renew them because they were switching the backend infrastructure.
Yeah.
And though I could probably learn Cake PHP, I choose not to.
Yeah.
Mainly because I don't want to.
Yeah. I concur. It's one of those things where the worst part is the decision can be made by somebody who's not qualified to make that choice. And you're powerless to do anything about it.
Well, even if they're qualified, even if there's a real technical reason, like let's say you have a Rails app, you probably should start thinking of, and it gets big, you're probably going to need to do some scary optimizations.
Well, I have a feeling our emails this week are going to be in defense of Ruby and Ruby on Rails.
I think we're going to get a lot of, why are you talking about Windows?
Yeah.
The fact that you brought up a stock quote is going to hurt. If you really want to see the trolling,
you're right.
It's going to be mostly to you.
The problem is, you know what? You're absolutely right. But those are the realities that developers need to look at.
It is. I mean, everything's driven by the business side. That's the truth, right? Remember the art in business. But more to this, and Chris, you own a company. When you wake up on a Tuesday and you have a WordPress backend, right? Are you like, God, I wish this was in Rails?
No.
So how does that happen to these guys? That's what I want to know.
What makes them decide we're going to jump platforms or we're going to jump technologies like that?
Yeah, it's going to cost like $40,000, but we're fine.
It's got to be previous successes, maybe, or in some cases it's corruption, like the vendor comes in and makes a sweetheart deal. And I don't know what else. You've witnessed this. What do you think?
I notice right now there is a lot of NoSQL fanboyism going around, where first thing a new CTO or PM does, if you're running MySQL or Postgres, they want to rip that thing out so fast. They're looking at Cassandra, MongoDB, anything. Usually MongoDB, to be honest with you. I have a server running Mongo. I like it. But I mean, it's just the key value. Like it's not magical.
I guess maybe it's also a great way for a new CTO to come in and be like, well, I reviewed our system and I have identified this change we could make so that way we can accommodate scale as the business grows. And we need to wipe out this and put in this technology so that way we don't hit the bottlenecks that companies like Facebook and Twitter hit.
Twitter was written in Rails, and they had to do some disturbing changes to scale up.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm saying.
That's why I picked it.
I know, because you figured you want the trolling. No, but honestly, I know this episode has been basically in the weeds.
That's okay.
Like these are the kind of things you have to deal with: the platform deciding to screw you over, and a new CTO waving his magical Ruby wand.
Gosh, they really are. Like, especially for people that are working in a 9-to-5. You seem like maybe you are, as a contractor, less, not vulnerable, but less, your ground isn't shaken quite as bit if something like this happens.
No, it certainly can be. So this works, I mean, we've been a little unfair, right? We've talked about the new trendy technology displacing the older ones. But there are cases where people say, oh, this is slow, we're moving to PHP.
Mm-hmm.
Like everybody defaults back to PHP,
right? Which
is fine. But usually I don't renew or those contracts end because I don't do that kind of work.
Mm.
I mean, more and more I do front end, but as a contractor, it affects you. But basically, all it means is the contract's going to end if it's not something you are to do.
Right, and as an employee, it means you got to decide if you're going to slog through it,
or they'll fire you for not being able to do it. I mean,
right.
That's reality.
Yeah. How do you prepare for something like this? Do you just have to stay versed? What can you do? Stay current.
Staying versed helps, but unfortunately, a lot of it's politics, right? I mean, if there's a new CTO, what happened to the first CTO?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Good point. There's something else going on there.
Yeah. I mean, CTOs, in my experience, almost never get fired for the app performing poorly. They get fired for political reasons. If the app performs poorly, PMs don't even get fired. It's it's contractors, then employee developers.
That blame is deferred, and you also don't want to change horses mid-race.
Yeah. I mean, and that's fine. And that's why a lot of companies hire contractors, because nobody wants to fire their employees because it's bad for insurance and crap like that. And it's also not nice.
Yeah.
But if a CTO gets dismissed, that's earth-shattering.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a game changer.
Mm-hmm.
If you in any way, in my experience, if you in any way are involved in that chain of command, that's over, even as a contractor.
Yeah, when it happened to me, we had an audit done, and they just kind of pinned a lot of the blame on the CTO for it was all business related stuff too. It wasn't even really technology stuff, but the CTO used to be part of the business side of things more so, and so it was a perfect scapegoat. And it was actually a she. They let her go, and then brought somebody else in. The sad part is sometimes as a contractor in smaller companies, I end up interviewing with the CTO. Mm-hmm.
When you can tell that he's being blamed for something, but the business will not give him the funds to do what he needs to do to fix the problem.
Right.
And some of these guys' faces, that they know they're done pretty soon.
Yeah.
But they won't let them pay for whatever they need to pay for to scale.
We see that more as contractors too, I think, because you go in there when usually they're at that point. A lot of times I get brought in and they're not saying it, but what they're really doing is bringing me up to speed, so that way I can step in for a week or two while they hire somebody else. And at some points, like they won't even say it to me they won't even say it directly. It's just pretty obvious what they're doing, and then I come in a couple days later and they're gone. And it's like, okay, well, we need you to fill in now.
Yeah, that happens a lot. I mean, and that's kind of the contracting game, right? They fire a lead developer, they bring you in for a month until they hire a new one. Sometimes they offer you the job.
Right.
But, actually, maybe for our guy who wrote in about, getting a promotion, maybe he doesn't want to go to the startup world. Now that I think about it, it's a little rough.
It can be stressful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, when the orders from on high come down and you have to move, sometimes your specialty will become a legacy specialty. But I think if you stay informed about the right technologies, you can always try to pitch your case, I suppose.
And one thing I would say is, always be ready to leave.
Mm-hmm.
Don't work on a technology that you hate and burn yourself out. Always keep the resume polished. Always have an exit strategy.
Yeah, that is really important. Don't burn yourself out.
If you are in a contract or an employee situation where you feel like you can't leave, you need to leave immediately. Right. Because the term death march would be appropriate.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sad but true. I know it sounds grim. It sounds grim, but if you just take it by the horns, and it'll be all right.
Just do it. All right, so let's wrap this up. Book of the week.
Yeah, tool of the week. What do we got this week for our tool?
I forgot about this tool of the week. Good catch. We have OmniPlan. So this was actually recommended to me by someone on Google+. It's a Mac app for projects.
Not cheap either. It's $200.
What?
Yeah.
It's $20.
Oh, okay. It says buy for $200 on their website.
Does it really?
It does. Yeah. Now for the iPad, it's $50 on their website. I don't know what it is in the App Store.
Then I am not buying this. I thought it was $20. I have the trial.
Oh well, I had a company buy it for me, and I've used it not for a while, but it's good. It's it's a project management application that instead of like Microsoft's project where you tie it in with SharePoint or you tie it in with a project server, this will publish to WebDAV shares. It'll do iCal subscriptions. It's a little more cross whatever you want to use type thing. So yeah. I like that about it. If your company's paying for it, and we've been really business focused this week, it's not a bad application, and it does sync with the iPad too, which is really nice for going into meetings and stuff. You can kind of pull it up on the iPad, and you can give them updates on the project and where things are at and what the timetable is, and it's it got a good impressive sort of look for that. But
yeah, I mean, I'm really liking it. I have the 14-day trial, which I'm coming towards the end of very quickly. For the Mac app, I did not realize it was that expensive.
Yeah, maybe I'm looking at the wrong thing, but I don't think
No,
so.
you are, because now I just brought it up myself, and it's $200.
Yeah, Omni's known for that, though. Omni's known for charging, I think they're local. I think they're in Washington State. I've followed them for a few years, and
I wonder, is it that much in the Mac App Store? Now that would be interesting. Are they getting away with the $200 app
in the Mac App Store? I don't know.
Yeah.
Is it in there?
Let me check.
Let's see, because that would probably be one of the... Yeah, it does say available in the Mac App Store. So yeah, that would probably be one of the more expensive ones.
It's $200.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's $50 for the iPad version. So that's got to be one of the most expensive iPad apps I've ever seen.
Yeah, okay then.
There's a lot of really great online and even open source project planning tools. I will say I would not pay for this myself if it was, but it was bought for me, and I really like it. And I haven't used it for a while, so I don't know if there's something that's better that's come along.
I'm wondering. I mean, because I've been cycling through PM tools for the last month. I mean, I'm using Teambox because one of my clients uses it, and it's pretty nice. It's a web-based tool, but it lacks a lot of the projection type stuff. And when you're managing multiple projects, it's really important to make sure you're on pace.
You don't want to rob from the other projects. And the Omni group is known for really being fanatical about their development process and the features, and they've really spent some research time on how to develop a really good project planning application. I think that maybe is why they charge the premium price. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is if you are running a contracting business and you can afford the because for a developer tool, $200 isn't terrible.
Yeah. There's more expensive things out there.
Yeah, I mean, if an MSDN license is a lot more. It's very good at what it does. Now, I thought it was $20. It's probably out of a lot of people's price range. But if you're having the same types of problems I'm having, which is keeping everything the proper velocity and the proper progression, because what's happening is I'm getting caught up on one project or another project, and that one's 2 weeks ahead, but something else is a week behind.
Right.
And I have to work an all-nighter.
I would say if you really are curious about this app and you have an internet pad, you might consider getting the $50 version instead of getting the $200 Mac version.
Well, they have a free trial for the Mac version.
Right.
So you could just do that.
Here's what the interesting thing is, though, about the iPad version is this is a really good example of a complete desktop quality app that has all the features you'd expect from something you traditionally have to install on a full computer. But it's been designed for the touch metaphor, and it works perfectly. It's a really good example, I think, of what future real applications, once these types of devices become more mainstream and people are using them more than computers, if that happens, this is an example of what future apps on this platform will look like.
Yeah, I may end up picking up the iPad version just because that's what I take to meetings, as I mentioned earlier in the show.
Yeah, and it's fully featured, so you don't miss any features by not having the desktop version. And honestly, it's kind of neat to touch like your plans and stuff like that. But it's $50, so we have a book this week.
Yes, we do. This ties into the listener who asked about design patterns. So this is a classic book, Design Patterns, Elements of Object-Oriented Design.
Design patterns, elements of reusable objects, oriented software, and we have a link to it in the show notes. Elements of reusable object-oriented software, the hardcover edition, also available for the Kindle and paperback, and a multimedia CD. Check that out.
Yeah, I think actually that book gets assigned a lot to students. So.
Oh, well, I want a multimedia. Funny thing is, the multimedia CD is the cheapest way to get it too. So you get multimedia and you get it for cheaper. Anyways, if you want to grab that, we'll link to it in the show notes, and by doing so, you help support the show because it's an affiliate link.
Fire the lasers.
Yes, fire the lasers. All right, well, if you can believe it, I believe that is the very end of this week's show.
It's incredibly off-topic and long show, yes.
I enjoyed it, though. Sometimes you got to get down in the weeds to talk about things that really matter because that's where the issues lie. Sometimes the issue lies in the weeds.
Indeed.
I like that. Now, you know what, Michael? People could check you out on app.net, can't they?
Oh, they could.
Could, if they wanted to. We have links to that in the show notes. Also, links to Michael's Google Plus profile, where he hangs out frequently, and to his blog. Anything else you want to plug, Michael?
There's also my Twitter.
Twitter, yep. Which you are still using, right?
I am. And also, you could pick up Code Journal in the Mac App Store.
Check it out, people. Go grab Code Journal. Maybe even give it a nice review and some star love, and help Michael spread the word about the app. All right, everyone. Well, I encourage you to join us live Mondays at 9 a.m. Pacific, and you can hang out in our chat room and comment live, or download the show after the fact Monday afternoons over at jupiterbroadcasting.com. All right, everyone. Well, thanks so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Coder Radio. See you right back here next week.